Many of us are familiar with the debilitating impact that stress can have on our mental health and well-being. But something that often goes unspoken about is the impact that stress can also have on our physical health, all the more so among the chronic illness community. When we experience a stressful situation, it's the hypothalamus in our brains that releases stress hormones, so these are things like adrenaline and cortisol, and these things cause our body to go into a state of fight or flight mode. In life-threatening situations, this fight or flight mode can be the thing that saves us, but in everyday life, being in this state for prolonged periods of time can cause a few issues, and they can actually exacerbate the symptoms of chronic illness because they basically disrupt the homeostasis that we have in our body. It makes it more difficult for us to pace ourselves and keep things consistent over the longer term. So with that in mind, the last thing that chronically ill people need is to be experiencing stress on a daily basis just from a typical day in the office. All of that said, it therefore seems a little bit ironic that chronically ill people are probably a bit more susceptible to stress in the workplace just because of the additional barriers they face. Some people might find it difficult to find inclusive opportunities, other people might find it challenging to secure reasonable adjustments or communicate with their managers, and all of these things can lead to many stressful and frustrating challenges in the workplace. So what can we actually do about it? Today I wanted to share 5 quick tips for managing stress in the workplace. Number 1 is to communicate, and as simple as it might seem, having meaningful communication with your line manager or your employer, or even just your peers and colleagues, can make all the difference. You might find it helpful to talk about how you're feeling, but on the flip side, even just having people to go to have everyday conversations that have nothing to do with work or your state of well-being can be really beneficial as well. Number 2 is to set realistic goals and expectations for yourself. A lot of chronically ill people often feel under pressure to overexert themselves and take on more than they know they can realistically handle. And I know from experience that that can quite often lead to a bit of a hefty to-do list and feelings of overwhelm. So wherever possible, I think it's beneficial to take on a little bit less than you know you're capable of. And if you get that done and you manage to take on additional things, see that as a bonus and an achievement and celebrate it rather than seeing it as a necessity. Number 3 is to experiment with different coping techniques. Different methods of managing stress are going to work better for different people, and there are so many different coping techniques out there for managing stress, both in the short term and in the longer term as well. A lot of these techniques just don't get talked about enough, so if this is something you're interested in, I'd highly recommend looking at the charity Mind's website because they have loads of brilliant resources on there. Number 4 is to consider your work-life balance, and I know this is so much easier said than done. A lot of chronically ill people find that they have to make sacrifices in other areas of their life in order to be able to work. And that's one of the reasons Astriid is committed to advocating for more flexible and inclusive opportunities. In the meantime, however, I think it's really important to think about any small changes you can do to address your work-life balance and give yourself the space you need. If you can, take regular rest breaks, try and separate your work life from your personal life, and just schedule proper time off where you're not consumed with work. And I know that's so much easier said than done, but I think it's really important to give your mind and your body the space it needs. And finally, number 5 is to seek tailored advice and support. Again, there's a lot of information out there about stress. I think it can be really helpful to look at the resources that specific chronic illness charities are putting out, so that they feel more tailored to you and your situation and they might feel a little bit more accessible. So don't be afraid to reach out to different charities, ask if they've got any resources, any helplines. And I'd also recommend keeping an eye on Astriid's website because as well as all of our other work, we're also in the process of developing a bespoke knowledge hub for chronically ill candidates and people who are in employment or seeking employment. So you can find out more about Astriid's work and keep up to date with everything we're doing by visiting www.astriid.org.uk.